Credit scoring has many myths and old wives' tales associated with it. Like other myths in this life, such as Bigfoot and Loch Ness Monster, they have enough logic to them that they persist because part of us wants to believe something that seems to be true, particularly when it's told to us by someone that seems very sure of it. But credit scoring myths are particularly prevalent because, among other things, there are certain things about the system that are counterintuitive. That seem like it just can't be so. We've covered enough about the subject that you know that the purpose of the credit reporting agency is to provide information in order for a potential lender to determine how trustworthy a person might be. Let's examine 7 of these myths and old wives' tales. Credit scoring myths and urban legends. On my blog on homebuyingandcreditrepair.com, I have written over 200 essays on credit repair and related subjects. It's the myths and legends that get the most hits because it's kind of fun to consider them, and it's also very instructive. Let's take 7 and examine them. Number 1, credit reporting agencies grant or deny credit. The 3 major credit reporting agencies, TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax, are what we usually talk about when we talk about credit reporting agencies, although there are more, which we will discuss.
My reputation is too high.
They have nothing to do with granting or denying credit. What they do is they gather data from billions and billions of data points of sources, include public records, include the record, of course, of your on-time or not on-time payments for your credit card accounts, your loans, car loan, your mortgage, and all this data is assembled and sold back to people that have an interest in finding out how trustworthy you might be. Then the computers use a kind of an algorithm to crunch all the data together and come up with a number which indicates how likely you are to repay the loan. The credit reporting agency does not grant or deny credit. It supplies the data to the would-be lender for them to decide whether to grant or deny credit. All they do is gather information from your credit history and from public records. So don't blame the messenger. The credit reporting agencies make more than their share of mistakes, and we'll talk about how to correct them as we go along. But it is not them that grant or deny credit. Myth number 1. Myth number 2. You have to remind the credit reporting agencies to remove old data. You should not have to. You may have to correct the way they report it, but a data point should be on the credit report that gives you what they call a purge date, or a date on which the negative information drops off as if it never existed. This is ordinarily 7 years after the date of your first delinquency. Not the date of last activity, as so many people think. It's 7 years of the first delinquency for most items. There are exceptions. We'll talk more about the exceptions at a later time. But you should not have to remind them. But just, it's always incumbent upon you to make sure that the data is correct. Number 3, criminal records are included on credit reports. They are not. This is one thing that's, as I said earlier, some things are very counterintuitive. You think that person's criminal record would be a very key point in deciding whether or not they're trustworthy for a loan or not. I mean, if someone has a criminal record, we would ordinarily consider they would be more likely to again get in trouble and not be able to pay the loan, or that they have a flaw in their character, but they do not. They do not include criminal records. Number 4, there are only 3 credit bureaus. Well, we're usually concerned with the 3 I mentioned earlier, but there are also approximately 30 more that are monitored by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Among them, LexisNexis and Ovis. There's a bunch of them that monitor things such as employment records and where employers check, and these 2 can be riddled with mistakes, so be careful about them. We'll talk more about them in the more advanced portion of the course. Courts send the public records to the credit reporting agency. That is a myth. Courts don't care anything about the credit reporting agency. public records are sent to them by a variety of people that are paid by the credit reporting agencies, one of which is called PACER. These are the people that send bankruptcy records. They're very efficient. Others are not so efficient. So for that reason, you could have a judgment showing on the credit report as an unpaid judgment more than a year after you paid it, because they haven't gone back and don't comb it efficiently. So, like I always stress, it's up to you. Be proactive about seeing what's on your credit report. Speak up if something wrong. Utility records are included. They're not. That unpaid electric bill is there on a credit report because it was allowed to become a judgment, and then the judgment became reported. Utilities do not report to the credit bureau. So if you're late with your electric bill, no one knows it at the credit reporting agency, unless you are so late or completely let it go into a judgment. At that point, it can become a problem. And finally, and this is completely counterintuitive, your income is not included. You get a nice raise, you would think that your credit score would go up with it, but it doesn't. The fact of the matter is they don't care how much you make. A surgeon making $1 million a year can have a worse credit report than someone making minimum wage. The only thing that matters is how responsibly you deal with the income that you have. So that the amount of income is not even relevant to the credit reporting agency. Have more myths and urban legends coming up.